Hello and welcome to the Feral Future Podcast, episode 2. We're back at it again.
Woo!
I'm Erik.
Hi, I'm Keri Joy.
Today we wanted to talk about reconnecting with nature and some of the ways that we like to do that in our life.
Yes.
First one being the sun.
Yes. My favorite conversation.
Right. So the sun is essentially the powerhouse of everything that we know of in our world. Everything that we see in the world and touch is essentially crystallized sunlight or turned into some sort of matter through plants or animals, through the food cycle. And yeah, everything we know is either powered by or created by the sun itself. There's also some religious connotations to the sun and the sun, if you want to really dive into that one, but maybe that's another show.
We did name our first kitty
Yes.
Helios, which means sun god.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's the Greek sun god. And he was black of all colors, but had these bright yellow eyes and certainly had a sun-like personality.
Absolutely.
Of, bringing light into our life in a very special way.
Absolutely.
But yeah, today we're talking about that big bright thing in the sky, revered for all of human history, but lately, in the last couple decades, has really become demonized and turned into something that's considered not good. And yeah, we wanted to talk about that because we're aware of some of the issues related to that and how that perspective has been and how the ideas have changed very recently compared to the rest of all of recorded history.
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, the sun has just played such a huge role in our overall health and vitality. I mean, I am way more affected by sunshine than you are. Like for me, I need my morning sun. I do a whole sun ritual first thing in the morning and ideally in the evening as well. But it really is a thing that kind of supercharges, my whole experience. And of course, if you listen to any like expert wellness person at the moment, they'll tell you to support your circadian rhythm for, proper and strong sleep cycles to be outside within 30 minutes of waking. Erik and I wake up super early. So it's like sometimes like the sun is like takes like 2 hours before we're even up or since we're up. But I still have this like incredible ritual that I do outside with our pup and we do sunrise gazing, as soon as we possibly can, regardless of sunshine or not.
Right. Yeah. So the most important thing about the sun is that it's just so much brighter than any kind of indoor light that you can see. Even if you're not in direct sunlight, there's still daylight versus sunlight, and it's still orders of magnitude brighter than any kind of like bright light. So it's good to get bright lights early in the morning. It helps to wake your body up. It turns off cortisol. It does all kinds of beneficial things with your cycle and your rhythms. And sun gazing is a really great thing to do that. Now, we were talking about just on the intro how the sun has been demonized, and the idea of looking at the sun is a big no-no, and you're not supposed to do that. But the time that you can do it the most safely is about a half an hour from sunrise, half an hour from sunrise, and a half an hour before sunset. When it's at its lowest point in the sky, you're looking through the most amount of atmosphere that there is. So the amount of actual UV radiation light is actually pretty diminished compared to when it's directly overhead and it's at its closest, shortest distance to us. So looking at the sun, and even if looking at the sun directly doesn't work for you, you look kind of 20 to 30 degrees away from it. So you're kind of looking toward the sun, but kind of off to the side, so you're not staring straight at it. But you can actually build up to a point where you can pretty much look right at the sun in that half an hour to an hour before sunset and after sunrise, and really take in lots of those kind of nourishing morning rays that, because your eyes actually eat photons essentially. Like when the light energy comes in, they go into your eyes and then they're consumed by the eye. So it actually is a type of energy source. There are even people who are very like high level yogis that basically feed themselves fully on sun gazing. I can't prove it. I've never seen it myself, but allegedly they can completely exist on sunlight through their eyes alone. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's an interesting concept.
It is an interesting concept. And it's actually one of the first concepts I got into probably like 20 years ago. I got this book like Amazing Secrets of Alternative Health and Healing. And that was one of the first concepts that was introduced to me. And I remember like my family thought I was like bonkers for like looking at the sun. Like nobody was talking about
Hmm.
sun gazing. I might have been like a teenager, at
Hmm.
the time when I first saw this book. Well, maybe I was already kind of in college, but still young. Um, and I've been doing that and believe in that for so long. And I want to also share something that I can't speak like as an expert on, but I recently took a course about natural how to heal your eyesight naturally. And one of the remedies, and we can put the woman who created this course because she's just phenomenal, is actually exercises that you do in the sun to help heal your eyesight,
Hmm.
whether you've had eyesight challenges from birth. You could basically heal these things naturally. So the sun is like pure medicine. There's all of these incredible benefits that, and
Hmm.
we've been told, you know, demonized, don't go in the sun, don't look at the sun, don't go out of go, don't go in the sun unless you're slathered with all these
Hmm.
chemicals. It's just amazing. I mean, there's all these things that I mean, I do. I'm a huge fan of like sun gazing my private parts because it's like it's just pure vitamin
Hmm.
D into these areas that are supportive to your immune system. Eric and I have both done courses on that and the benefit of that, and which is obviously very taboo to the mainstream. And who does something so
Hmm.
ludicrous and so crazy? But you're literally getting direct vitamin D in those areas that need it the most because they don't ever generally get that. Obviously, you have to, work up to the quantity of that you're doing, but those things are
Hmm.
amazing. I also feel like I want to credit Nadine Artemis because she really brought the whole, the sun is like holy and so and
Hmm.
medicine like. And again, this was probably at least, I mean, she's probably been talking about this for at least 20 years, but I probably started picking up about it, maybe 15 years ago or so when I was living in New York. And so she has some incredible things to say. And then we talk a lot about carnivore and how he
Carnivore
speaks,
Aurelius, yeah.
yeah, how he speaks to the whole seed oil
Hmm.
fact, which you can speak to much more
Yeah,
intelligently.
yeah, and so the idea of the whole feral living thing and going back to the old ways, obviously they were not afraid of the sun and they relished the sun and had tan skin, and skin cancer wasn't even something that existed back in the day. And I think it's important to understand the overall context of civilization, what we consider normal, what we're given as advice by our medical experts, so to speak. And I think, yeah, the seed oil part of it is really one of the major factors, and cholesterol is also another major factor. So I guess I'll start with the seed oil part of it first. But essentially, um, a lot of the oils that we are used in cooking, especially in restaurants today, are canola oil, soybean oil, corn oil, and they're all essentially made from seeds. And the problem with that is they require excessive refinement. So they're highly refined, much like white sugar is, white flour, these kinds of things that we know that aren't that great for us because they're so refined. Well, these oils are similar to that. They're usually stored in plastic, so there's a lot of microplastics in them as well, and they go rancid very easily. So a lot of times people, by the time you're actually consuming them, they're already heavily oxidized and creating lots of inflammation. And what happens is those oils, you are what you eat, as we talked about before. So those oils essentially get incorporated into the skin cells, into the actual lipid surrounding part of the cell. And when you get in the sun, those oxidized oils actually further oxidize and create their own inflammation factor. So a lot of sunburns that we see these days are actually caused by the oxidation of the seed oils in the cell walls of the skin, as opposed to the skin itself actually getting burned. So it's sort of like this internal inflammation that's happening in response to the sun exposure because of these chemicals that really aren't even supposed to be there. So if you're eating a lot of seed oils and you're going out in the sun, then probably sunscreen is a good thing to protect, you know, those lipids from oxidizing further and causing the skin damage and the skin cancers that come out of that. Um, we eat a lot of animal fats, butter, olive oil, and ghee are probably and coconut oil are our top three fats. And olive oil, obviously, plant oil, but coconut oil is saturated fat like animal fats. And what happens is those oils do not oxidize in sunlight. In fact, they help to create beneficial compounds, and they actually nourish the skin when it gets exposed to the sun. So we just went to Hawaii a few months ago, and I had not. It was in February, and it had been kind of, even though we're in California, it was not exactly outside with your shirt off kind of weather. And you know, tropical sun. I've never even been that far south before to be exposed to that. And yeah, I got red. I definitely got that deep color, um, but I never burned and I never peeled, and it immediately took to a tan. And
Hmm.
within a couple of days, I was looking like I had been in a tanning salon for weeks, and it was within a couple of days of exposure that happened. And I attribute that solely to the diet that we have, um, and how my body was able to take in that
Hmm.
sunlight, turn it into melanin, actually create the darkness in the skin as opposed to just burning and peeling
Right.
because of overcoming this inflammation
Right.
factor. Here's the rub, though. You can do this too, but it takes about 7 years for your body to flip all of the seed oils back into these healthier, skin healthier saturated fats that are needed in order to be able to be out in the sun like that without any kind of coverage. Um, and a tan, to me, I would consider it like skin fitness in the same way. If you hadn't done any kind of exercising at all and you go and you run a 5K, you're going to be wrecked afterwards. And the sun is the same way. You're going to start with some light jogs. You're going to start with maybe some stairs, maybe just some walking, and just really kind of getting used to being in that movement place. And then you build up over time to the point where you can do the longer sessions. And that's true for the sun as well. So definitely take your time to build that up. Um, and then the third component, which is also really interesting, is cholesterol. Again, cholesterol has been demonized for a long time, and there are certainly issues with cholesterol when tied with things like triglycerides and inflammation factor. But as a singular number on a test, it really doesn't say that much. And unfortunately, doctors these days, they just see a number, and if it's over, you got to go on statins. You've got high cholesterol, or you're at risk of these potential conditions, and often ignore these other factors that are really the linchpins that determine whether or not it's something to be concerned about or not. But what happens with cholesterol, especially in sunlight, is it creates, when sunlight hits the cholesterol in the skin, it creates a compound called sulfated cholesterol. And the sulfated cholesterol is actually the precursor to things like vitamin D and also other components like melanin and even things like testosterone. So the sun is actually highly beneficial in a scenario where there's saturated fats in the cell walls and when there's cholesterol present, in order to be converted into these beneficial compounds that actually make us feel good and look good and get the true benefits of the sun.
Hmm.
So if somebody's on a heavy seed oil diet and they're on something like statins, don't be in the sun. I can totally agree with that because, yeah, it's not good for you.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, these modern diets that we have and this advice that we've been given by the medical industry at large doesn't take into account all of these factors that create the situation. So here we are, not worried about cholesterol, not worried about saturated fats, and not worried about sunlight. And those are some of the three most worrisome topics that come
Hmm.
up when you hear about health and wellness today.
Hmm. And okay, so I lived in Costa Rica in 2012. So my skin now, since that experience, will tan very quickly from just being in the sun for short amounts of time. So I feel very lucky about that. However, what would we say to people who do want to start this? Like, how long is a good amount of time to start, being in the sun without the protection and all of that?
Yeah, well, something else that we didn't talk about is sunglasses. Um,
Which we do not wear.
we never wear sunglasses anymore, and something that we found out was that the eyes, again, being the primary light sensors of the body, basically based on how much light, how much sunlight is out there, will tell the skin how much melanin or how, like, what to be prepared for in order for the sunlight exposure that it's going to
Hmm.
see. Now a hat is fine because you're
Yeah.
still getting the brightness and that overall glare, or whatever you want to call it. The eyes are still picking up on that. But when you wear sunglasses that actually block, something like 90 something percent of
Hmm.
UV, if not 100%, your eyes basically think you're inside. And so the
Absolutely.
processes that would get activated to protect you in the sun essentially don't happen because the sensors are diminished and turned
Right.
off. So, number one, start by reducing wearing sunglasses
Hmm.
outside.
Also, it's going to help with sleep right off the bat.
Mhm.
Not wearing sunglasses outside. It's gonna because, like you said, if you feel like if you're wearing the sunglasses, it's like you're inside
Right,
all day, so you're not getting pure light, which you need to kind of help support the natural
right.
rhythm and flow of your sleep cycles.
So yeah, definitely. So don't wear sunglasses. Wear a hat.
Hmm.
Start very slowly and start reducing the amount of seed oils that you're taking in your
Hmm.
diet. And I believe the half life is about 2 years. So after 2 years, about half of it is gone. About another year, another half is gone. About another year. So it takes about 7 years for everything to completely cycle
Hmm.
through. But by adopting the fats like butter and ghee, olive oil, and coconut oil as your primary fats that you use in your diet, and let the body sort of replenish the cell walls with those beneficial oils that can operate in the sun directly. That's number one. Stop wearing sunglasses. If you're on statins or have cholesterol issues, work on getting off of those and get a healthy balance of cholesterol in the body so that you can go outside and create those beneficial compounds that cholesterol requires, that it requires cholesterol in order to create them. And take your time.
Hmm.
Start slow. The longer you give yourself to prepare for it, the better you will be. But
Hmm.
definitely, I would say, 10 to 15 minutes at most a day. And once you start getting a little bit pink, that's usually a good indicator.
Hmm.
And you had mentioned Nadine Artemis. She has a great skincare line called Living Libations. And she uses a compound or an oil called sea buckthorn in a lot of her um, skin oils, especially related to sun. And that's really, really beneficial
Hmm.
post sun to get something like sea buckthorn
Hmm.
on the
Yeah.
skin to help get the color in and prevent any kind of peeling or damage
Hmm.
to the skin.
Absolutely. I mean, I use all of her like skincare and sun care products. She has a sun care product that I kid you not turns me tan within minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is the most incredible, beautiful product. And also her book, she definitely speaks about this protocol in her book, and I'm blanking on the name, but we could add it, of
Mm-hmm.
course, because it's a valuable resource. Oh, Renegade Beauty, I believe.
Okay.
And I know she has several, but one of the books she talks about um, the process and how long and kind of work up. And you start with like 15 minutes, like Erik was saying, and you can kind of work up to that. And I think that's such a huge part that we also have to acknowledge is just immunity. I mean,
Mm.
I see people covered up, white faces in the middle of summer with the sunglasses, with the hat, with the sleeves, and they look pasty, they look sick, they look frail, they look so unwell because they're listening to this advice to like as if the sun is the devil. And
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy. And we need vitamin D. We absolutely need vitamin D. It is such a great resource. It's such a great it's just like one of the things you should have in your arsenal, and then to not get this pure source, and then to see, the children doing the same
Mm-hmm.
thing, it's really heartbreaking, and obviously it's very confusing, the information, and we're not trying to overwhelm or definitely not want to create any fear. However, it's just I feel like a big part of what we're trying to do within Feral is also just let's just think a little bit differently than we've been told. Let's ask important questions. Let's just not follow. Let's just not blindly say, my doctor said this, my doctor said that, because then you're putting all this control on an outside source. You're the victim, putting it onto
Right.
someone else. And we have the power. And that's a huge part of what we're trying to express and inspire and create here at Feral Future is just how powerful we all are as human beings. And you have to find what's right for you.
Mm-hmm.
And what I can do is different than Erik because of my experience in the past. And so, we have to find what works for us. That's the medicine for everyone. We are all so unique, and it applies to food, it applies to sun, it applies to all the things that we'll probably talk about. There's no one right way to do anything. And listening blindly to outside guidance is just a recipe for a disaster.
Right.
So,
Yeah, you can certainly take it into advisement and use it within your unique situation, but it's one of those things where there's just so much history of humans being in the sun without these issues that we have now.
yeah.
And when it comes down to it, it's not the sun. it's our diet, it's our lifestyle that has changed. It's not the sun.
Absolutely.
It's not the nature that
Yeah.
has changed.
Yeah.
So we are now living a different life, which is causing these normal processes to not work correctly, and that's
Right.
what we need to go back to.
Right.
That's about the ancestral thing. That's about the
Sure.
activations of
Sure.
the ancestral pathways.
I mean, should we mention how different it is in some of this like countries out of America? How different, just in terms of like what, with not having the seed oils and things
Yeah,
like
I
that.
know in a lot of countries, especially the European countries, like Italy, for example, or France. You think about um, the south of France. What do they call that whole coastal region down there?
The South, Saint Tropez.
Well, there's like the French Riviera,
Oh,
for
okay.
example. Monaco and all that stuff. You just see people out there bathing in the sun, nude, and drinking wine and eating pasta and
Yeah,
just
and having
looking
the time of
amazing
their
and having the time
lives.
of their life, and probably even smoking cigarettes and
Yeah,
drinking alcohol, whatever. And they're fine,
yeah,
and here we are, um, worried about all these factors, and it
yeah,
turns out that maybe the worry is probably the worst thing for us,
absolutely.
not the environment
The
itself.
worry and the lifestyle itself, because in those countries they also take off 2 months a year.
Mm,
They take breaks for lunch. They
yeah.
go. They have siestas. They they don't have the amount of like preservatives or pesticides or things like that in the food. They thrive in community.
Hmm.
They relish outdoor activity, and a lot of them, there's so much more, like, I don't know, obviously this is, but just being outside and being in community and being in nature is a huge part of it, with
Yeah.
less rules, less screen, less blue lights, which we can
Hmm.
talk about separately.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely all those things. So getting back to what you just mentioned, the blue light. Um, when you go outside in the middle of the day, obviously the sky is blue, and there's a heavy blue shift or blue tint to the light that we're getting, and that really activates the sort of being awake hormones of the day. And then at nighttime, we're really optimized. One, at sunset, it gets very orange. It's that orangey red golden hour type light, and for the majority of human history, we've had firelight to keep us able to see at night until we go to bed. And the firelight is, again, very yellow, orange, red kind of colors. So blue lights at night really mess up the rhythm of the body and make the body feel like it's still daytime out, and it activates the kind of stay awake hormones in the body that keep you up all day. So things like TV, things like your phone, things like your computer screen, all of those have a lot of blue light. And even with some of the technology changes where they now have like a night light or a night shift mode where it goes to sort of an orangey red color at night, it's still it's still not good for you. It's still very bright, and just the amount of brightness and sheer brightness is brighter than we should be seeing at night at all. And then if you factor in things like um, bluish, LED or fluorescent style light bulbs in the house, all of those things will keep that elevated daytime system going. So definitely at night, you want to turn the lights down as much as you can off. Do red lights. Keri likes to wear red glasses that block blue light, so she's only getting red light at night. And then one thing that we've recently done, especially as we moved into our new place here at Farrellheim, is we've installed red incandescent light bulbs in a lot of our light fixtures. So those go on at night at sunset. So we're basically walking around with just pure red lights at night. And it's interesting because fighter jets and race cars all have red gauges and red dashes, or airplanes in general. And that's because it doesn't disrupt your night vision. So it also has low glare. So you can walk around and see clearly. It kind of almost looks black and white because the red tint kind of takes the color out of everything, but you can see clearly, and it doesn't blow your eyes out. You don't have
Mhm.
that situation where all of a sudden you turn the lights on and you're blinded, and then you turn them off, and then you're put back into pitch darkness.
Right.
So that's a really great way to help support the body in going to bed and transitioning from day to night, and going to bed with your system feeling like, okay, yeah, all of my nighttime hormones and processes have kicked off, have activated. And yeah, by the time you go to bed, you're much more likely to fall asleep and then sleep more soundly throughout the night.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, of course, back in the day, they didn't have anything. They had firelight and candles.
Hmm.
And so we're trying to kind of replicate that in our own way. before I met Erik, I had kind of like amber,
Hmm.
right? Was it amber bulbs
Right.
I had
Very yellow color.
in my
Yeah.
house? And we still have some of those, but when we moved in here, he put everything into the red, and even our refrigerator.
Yeah. Shout out to Joel Saladino. He has a kind of a health compound down in Costa Rica,
Yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
he had red light. He had put red lights in his refrigerator even, so
Uh-huh.
that when you open the fridge, you don't get your
Yeah.
night vision blown out.
Yeah, because I remember hearing a long time ago that when you look at your phone, it's almost like a shot of espresso past the hour. So if you're looking at your phone and it's in the pitch black or dark at night, and it's like you start to look at it at 9 o'clock, or you open that refrigerator with regular light, it's like you're a shot of espresso to your system. So we do everything possible. And there's all these little, hacks that you can do that are relatively inexpensive
Hmm.
to support that. And so now we don't have to deal with any of that. And it really does make a difference. And we also see it a huge thing with the boys when they're
Hmm.
here, like
Yeah.
how much easier and more calm they're able to kind of like smooth themselves and get into bed without having all that additional
Right.
stimulation.
Yeah. And before you and I met, I got into making excuse me. I got into making beeswax candles, and those make a really really nice yellow
Yeah.
light, very very soft and soothing. And so I highly recommend beeswax candles, specifically unscented beeswax candles. Um,
They're part of our feral pantry line.
Absolutely. And something that I heard, I haven't confirmed it, but I've heard that they actually put out
Oh
ions. They
yeah.
ionize the air and
Yeah.
actually attract dust and pull the
Yeah.
dust out of the air. So they kind
Yeah.
of act as an air purifier,
Absolutely.
where other kind of candle materials like soy and paraffin don't do
Right.
that. They actually introduce
Right.
some irritants into the air.
Right.
So pure beeswax candles are the way to go for both color, smell, and air quality.
Yeah.
And they're great to have at night because I feel like, electricity kind of stole fire from us. And we have a
Sure.
fire here on the podcast that's going pretty much every night, year round, just because of the lighting that it gives and sort of the warmth and the energy that it provides. And
And it's cold in the morning.
yeah,
It's cold in the morning and night. Really, no matter. Does it ever not get cold? Like I forget.
it, around here it gets pretty chilly at night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But even so, even if you don't have a fireplace, just lighting a candle
Yeah.
at dinner time and maybe letting it go until you go to bed. And
Absolutely.
even if you're reading, for example, and you have a little reading light, having a candle nearby will shift that color and
Yeah.
help to sort of um, promote those sleep. It's interesting. We're talking about light for sleep, but it really is one of the
Oh
most
my
important
God.
things. You know?
I know. It's so funny. I remember saying to my dad when I was home during the pandemic in 2020, and I was like, Dad, everyone's going to be talking about light soon. And he's like, Light? What are you talking
Yeah.
about? And like, how important is it? It's so important. It's such an important part of our overall wellness and something that we totally have taken for granted, just like what it has done, and then obviously these different things that we've tried to implement. So I feel like it might be cool, Erik, for us to maybe like put out something with this so we can make it really easy for people to implement their own little like night arsenal, or
Definitely.
morning arsenal as well.
Check the description box below the video.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love all that. I think that's super important and it's stuff that is really easy to do.
Hmm. Anything else you want to cover on light while we're?
No, I feel like we've given Helios a huge
Yeah,
homage.
and we've shown a light onto light health.
Yes, absolutely.
So the next thing we wanted to talk about is grounding
Yes.
and being in direct contact with the earth itself.
Yes.
Most of the shoes that we wear today and most of the surfaces that we walk on are insulators, and we are not directly connected to the earth itself. And you'll notice that if you walk around and touch something like a doorknob and get a shock, basically the static charge that you've built up on your body is being discharged and released. Where if you were truly connected to the earth, you would essentially never have those sort of shocks happening. Um, in nature, every creature is always grounded all the time, except for birds,
Mm.
and they ground as soon as they land on any natural object. So the nature of things, the normal state, is to be in direct contact with the earth and having this shared sort of voltage level with the earth itself. You see lightning, that's like a larger version of a static shock you would get. And yeah, it's the sky and the ground equalizing and bringing their charges to the same point, and that energetic quality. So There's something called the Schumann resonance, which is like this natural resonance of the earth itself, and that's like the frequency that everything is sort of powered by. So we have the sun being the light frequency, but this is like the earth grounding
Mm-hmm.
frequency side of it. So one of the things that we like to do obviously is be barefoot whenever possible. And we also wear minimalist or barefoot shoes. So the whole aspect of not only being in contact with the earth, but having your feet touching the earth as they're intended to be doing. So barefoot shoes typically have a thinner sole. They typically don't have any kind of support. So there's no arch support. There's no like heel lift or anything like that. They're just flat and very thin sole and a lot of flexibility so that you essentially are walking in a way that would be mimicking not having any shoes at all. They're really just there to protect your feet from abrasion and heat and punctures, and kind of fitting in with the style norms to some degree, so you don't look like a weirdo walking around barefoot all the time. Um, so when we have shoes that are rubber, I go through the process of installing like a copper rivet into the sole, so that as we're walking around, we're constantly grounding with the earth and releasing any kind of charge that may build up. And with things like frequency, like cell phone frequencies and Wi-Fi and microwaves and any number of any electronic device that has a motor or some sort of compressor or something that's running in the background is putting out some sort of charge or frequency or field that we're picking up as we move around. And so to have that direct connection with the earth, we're essentially giving that a place to go as opposed to our body taking it on and holding it. And many studies now have shown where people who are grounded through either being barefoot, through earthing shoes, and even through things like bedding that has copper embedded in it, or sort of like a ground strap that goes to the earth, or even like a plug that goes to the grounding
Mm-hmm.
side of a plug, they notice massive reduction in things like inflammation, improved blood flow, improved healing. There's all kinds of benefits to being connected with the earth. Um, and it's one of those interesting conundrums where here we are having to do this extra work to get back to where things always were
Mm-hmm.
before modern society
Right.
came into being.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and also I was actually with a practitioner, and he had up on his board kind of like how we get ill. And it was the two things side by side were inflammation and stress. Like those are the culprits and kind of the byproduct of all these ways that we get sick. And then he had this whole different diagram. And so, yes, just the fact that if you go outside, ideally between 10-20 minutes, and you ground yourself in the earth, that really reduces your everyday inflammation load. And did I say information or inflammation?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's just we were also talking about this today, just the amount of toxins and environmental stressors from the environment that we are experiencing now. It's like the human body cannot keep up. Like
Mm-hmm.
I I am I do everything possible in my power to be as healthy as I possibly can. And I still feel like sometimes it's with the overload of what is happening from the food and the spraying and the trails and just and then and the machinery and the technology and the radiation, we're just bombarded
Mm-hmm.
constantly. And these are just simple things. They're free. Obviously, if you do want to, we support some incredible companies. I literally don't think I've put on a pair of shoes that have not been grounded in the past 8 years. I also think like I am an extremist when it comes to this stuff. When I hear something is good for me, there's no like halfway. It's
Mm-hmm.
like I found, and this was a while ago when there wasn't as many companies as there are today. And I found this incredible company in Canada, the Earthing Company. Um, there's a few other brands that I started wearing, and they're just simple kind of mom and pop shops, nothing fancy, no big Instagram following, just like salt of the earth, just like, no, this is good for you. And I started wearing them because I knew it was better for me. So I started doing that. And then when Erik and I met, the fact that he could then ground all the other shoes that I would wear, that was just like this incredible added bonus. So this adding this additional, copper element
Mm-hmm.
to, is just incredible. So it is something that, we find is super supportive. Barefoot is best. I also wear moccasins, like leather moccasins, that I love. That also is kind of like you're outside, just completely grounded. But if you can do that, and also I mean, my routine in the morning is when it's sunny, is I'm outside barefoot. I'm like connecting with the sun, and I'm kind of like raising to the best of my ability, my own personal frequency, and connect to my central channel, because we all have one, and it goes from like the spine, your lower spine up through the crown of your head, and you kind of activate, earth energy from below and from up above. And that's really, again, just such a great defense that we have right now, to do these things on a daily
Mm-hmm.
basis as much as we possibly can, to support ourselves. Because yeah, the bombardment of things, is the system is just in constant overwhelm.
Right. And again, your ritual is basically going outside and being in sunlight barefoot
Right.
after it's not dark. It's like,
Exactly.
and it's like a process that you have
Yeah.
to think about doing and actually
Yeah.
be conscious of, as opposed to just 99% of humanity for 99% of its history has
Yeah.
just been normal,
Yeah.
and the fact that we
But it
have to
is
think.
normal now. I mean, I
Right.
have normalized it, but it's
But you know, I
not
mean, you're
normal
people would
to.
hear that and be
Yeah.
like, well, that's
Yeah.
pretty extreme, and it's like, well,
Exactly.
not really. It's
Yeah.
sort of kind of what we always
Yeah.
have done up
Yeah.
until now, like up
Yeah.
until the last 100 years or so. Like, it was just
Absolutely.
normal.
And I feel like, I don't know if we, but like, I feel like it's important to mention dance in that. I know that's not one of the things we were talking about, but if we can also take that time when we're outside and move our bodies in ways that is not necessarily a specific, would you say, linear way to do something,
Hmm.
and to kind of do it in the ways that are unfamiliar and kind of surprising, and create movement, throw on some music. It's just this other way
Hmm.
that is so supportive to the body,
Well,
to the
your version of
system.
that is dance. For me, it would be surfing,
Yes.
right? So I would go in the electrolyte soup of the ocean,
Yes.
in the sun, and move my body in
Yeah.
unique and non-specific ways,
Yeah.
depending on the
But we
motions of
are
the ocean.
dancing more together.
But the idea of yes, but the idea of any kind of athletic endeavor or some sort of movement practice
Yeah.
in the morning after you get up, one, it's just good for your body to do that, and also if you can do it with getting some sunlight and shedding off any kind of excess voltage or
Mhm.
frequency that isn't serving you. It's just the most optimal way to start
Yeah.
your day.
Absolutely.
All right. So we talked about sunlight. Was there anything else you want to talk about on grounding
With grounding?
or earthing?
No, but we can definitely share some of the companies that we love. I did just buy this incredible pair of brown leather boots that I am
Mm-hmm.
absolutely in love with, and wore throughout our photo shoot for our website, that
Mm-hmm.
I feel is doing such cool things. Because to find a pair of boots like this, just like the handmade element and the leather element, and the fact that they're grounded and they're so chic, is just incredible, to how where fashion is
Mm-hmm.
kind of, coming up,
Definitely.
as well.
Yeah, I've been a long time wearer and supporter of Zero shoes,
Hmm.
XERO. I found them back in like 2017. I also really like a sandal company called Earth Runners.
Hmm.
They make they're kind of like a Huarache style sandal with a rubber sole, but they use a conductive lace and with a copper plug. So the entire lace system is conductive with a central copper kind of situation that touches the ground and sheds off any kind of frequency. Now we ground our Zero shoes,
Hmm.
and those work really well. And then for kids, I really like splay shoes.
Hmm.
They have a bunch of great options in kid sizes that are like slip on and even Velcro, so it's easy to get them in there. They're very simple, pretty inexpensive, pretty reasonable. And they also have some cool stuff now. They've actually gone into things like skateboard shoes, for example, which I think is interesting. How more dedicated shoes, I think things like soccer and baseball cleats, um, sprinting shoes, even basketball. I know Zero Shoes
Hmm.
just released a basketball
Yeah,
shoe, and they
so
have
cool.
some NBA players that are wearing those. And I think one of the teams actually got to the finals this year, and so it's sort of
So
a major
cool.
step. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because you see, being that I follow the news on the there's these basketball shoe review people reviewing them. Um, and they're not faring well because of the metrics that they use. It's kind of like
Right.
the medical system, like we were talking about
Sure.
earlier. They're like, well, for support, they don't have support. It's like, so I have to give it a 0.
Right,
And so
right,
they don't
right.
get a good score based on the metrics, the system that they're using to measure it by, because they're comparing against the norm. And these being outside the norm don't even try to, adhere to some of these categories. And some people might see that as like a fault,
Right.
when in fact it's the primary feature is that
Right.
there is no support,
Right.
and it relies on the foot actually being
Right.
strong and capable. And um, you know the lower shoe height reduces, or the lower sole, thinner sole reduces cushioning.
Mhm.
But the whole idea of a barefoot shoe is that your body is doing the cushioning. The natural kind of spring effects that the body has are expected to be functioning properly, as opposed to relying on the shoe to do it for you in a way that's not even natural and is in fact probably causing problems by
Right.
being there.
Right.
Um, and if you ever want to have proof that modern shoes aren't that good for your feet, just do a Google search on LeBron James feet barefoot. This guy's been wearing Nike. He's been with Nike or some high level, whether it's Nike, Reebok, Adidas, whatever the company is. He's been getting custom shoes of the best kind for his entire career, and his toes are
Yeah.
absolutely a nightmare.
Yeah.
So it just shows you that just because even a guy at his level, his feet are mangled,
Right.
and it's not that much different than like what the idea of like foot binding was back in
Right.
like ancient China, which is
Yeah.
considered barbaric these days.
Right.
We're still doing it to some degree
Yeah.
now. I know that for me, when I switched, I was a size 11 in like a Reebok or a Nike shoe, and now I'm a 12. So my feet went up a full size just by giving my feet the space they needed to sort of like function the way
Mhm.
feet are supposed to function, in terms of like the toes splaying out,
Mhm.
and all of um, the secondary muscle activations that go to support and stabilize. And again, like we talked about the sun gazing, we like talked about going out in the sun. There's a process of adapting to it. You don't want to immediately jump into barefoot shoes and then go run
Right.
a 5K. You're going to get plantar fasciitis and have all kinds of pains because your body is going to be working in a different way. So it's really important to sort of like give yourself time to transition. And then once you start feeling more comfortable, you can kind of transition fully. Um, and so I'm definitely a barefoot shoe um, purist, I guess you could say, or even
Yeah.
an enthusiast, or I'm in the
Absolutely.
cult, if you want to even call it
Yeah.
that. But I've talked to a lot of people about it in various different ranges of athletics, and
And what wasn't
um,
a lot of this inspired from that book, Born to Run?
the idea of barefoot shoes was very much inspired by
Okay.
that. I never actually really read that book. I'm
Okay.
not a huge runner myself, although I
Okay.
find that I enjoy running more in barefoot shoes as I've developed my capabilities much more than I used to. I don't get knee pain anymore, and it doesn't hurt my low back. Um, but even so, my main inspiration was one of my primary inspirations was a guy named Daniel Vitalis, who used to do a show called the Rewild Yourself podcast. He has a show on, I think, the Outdoor Living channel now called Wild Fed,
Yeah.
where he talks a lot about hunting and foraging and that sort of thing. But he was very instrumental in a lot of the feral type of concepts that I follow. But yeah, he was definitely an inspiration, and kind of introduced the idea of barefoot shoes to me. And once I heard him talk about it, again, it was so obvious, and it
Right.
made so much sense to me that it was like, well, I have to do this.
Yeah.
And then my story about Zero Shoes, when they were launching, they actually went on Shark Tank, and they declined the offer that they were given. And at the time, they were just doing like DIY sandal kind of things. Um, and I found them as they were just launching, and they were doing a Kickstarter. And so I invested. I had the opportunity of buying one Bitcoin or investing in Zero Shoes for the same amount of money, which is about $1,000 at the time. And part of me regrets not doing the Bitcoin at this point, with it being 95K. But since I've been an investor in Zero Shoes, I actually receive a discount on shoes, essentially for life. And so I've been wearing them myself, my kids, family members, and friends. Anybody that I know that's interested in them, I try to get them in a pair, just to um, bring them into that world. And yeah, so like I was saying, my foot grew a full size. My toes have opened up. I have a normal toe splay. Essentially, it's, if you look at a baby's foot, their feet are almost like a duck's foot,
Mhm.
where the baby toe and the big toe are almost like pointing in away from each other. And shoes essentially like push the toes back together. And bunions, for example, are 100% caused by shoes. They're not a foot problem. They're not genetic or anything like that. It's just that you've been wearing, your family's been wearing shoes that destroy your feet for
Right.
generations. This is really what it is. And if you're more susceptible to it, then it's going to be more severe. But that kind of knob is just your joint getting
Yeah.
pushed over, and it's a very low support. It's not stable,
Right.
and your feet are supposed to be the most stable thing you have. But the main thing that I wanted to share with that I, besides the strength of the feet, the improved balance, agility, um, is the awareness of my feet, like how
Mm-hmm.
much information comes in through your feet
Mm-hmm.
that you don't realize is there. So I compare it to, you've been wearing sort of like earmuffs or over the, like headphones your whole life, and all of a sudden you take them off and you like realize what sound is actually like with those headphones or earmuffs removed. That's what it's like moving to
Right.
barefoot shoes. It's sort of, it's almost like a new sense has
Mm-hmm.
been activated. And even things like going up and down stairs, I can feel like my toes sort of like gripping over the edge of the stair.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's not like visibly there, I can feel and kind of just the activation of the feet
Right.
with the thinner shoes and the flexibility that they allow. It's pretty unbelievable.
So cool. Well, I'm very grateful for my zeros from you as well.
Mhm.
I have winter boots,
Right?
sneakers,
Yeah.
sandals.
Yeah.
I mean, we have like I
You got
have
some fuzzy boots too, like
yeah,
some like comfy slip-on
yeah, yeah.
ones,
Yeah.
and
Those I
yeah,
mean, I'm on my third pair of those.
yeah. It's really neat. So when I first, a lot of times people think of barefoot shoes as like those five finger shoes that almost look like gloves, where like
Mm-hmm.
each toe has its own, and they're very odd looking, and they're the most functional in terms of being true barefoot, but they're weird, and a lot of people see them and it's sort of off putting. But there's so many barefoot shoe options right now. You can pretty much get any style, any kind of vibe, any kind of material. It's almost a complete.
Yeah,
It's becoming so
yeah,
standard now that I think it won't be long now
yeah.
before
Absolutely.
companies like Nike, Reebok, and New
Yeah,
Balance are going to have to start making true barefoot
yeah,
shoes that just to compete, because
yeah,
I think
for
they're going to
sure.
be left behind
Yeah,
with the kind of groundswell that's happening.
absolutely. I love it. Well, we'll put some information on some of our favorite brands and maybe even how to do it yourself.
Yeah, look for a video. I can show you how to ground your shoes using copper rivets.
Yes,
It's not hard, but it's also a
the
process.
process.
So,
Yeah,
and I've come up with a way to, if you have an insole in your shoe um, that would otherwise prevent the connection, I've come up with a way to allow
yeah,
for the effect to move
yes.
through. So,
My jack of all trades
yes,
at his finest,
yes,
always.
yes. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for today.
Okay.
It's been a great episode.
Okay, great.
Love talking about this kind of stuff.
Yes.
And stay tuned for future episodes. We're going to keep diving into all different kinds of the feral world and ways to reconnect with our natural ways, and connecting with the earth through food and body and mind and soul, and all of those things.
And
So,
relationships and family
yeah,
and freedom, all the things that we love.
absolutely.
Yes.
All right. Well, stay tuned. And remember, the future is feral.
The future is feral. See
Thanks.
you soon. Thanks so much.